Welcome. I'm Susan Sterling, the Alice West Director of the National Museum of Women in the Arts, and it's my honor to welcome you to this virtual tour of Women to Watch Paper Roots. This is the 6th installment of this very important series that we use to show the works of lesser known, younger emerging talent, or underrepresented women artists. And we're very proud of this endeavor. Before my colleagues, Ginny, Treanor, and Orin, Zahra, take you on this virtual tour, I just wanted to mention how important this exhibition is to our mission of championing women in the arts and women through the arts. I also wanted to thank all of our committees, the artists, our colleagues in other museums, and also our sponsors for making this possible. This year, Paper Roots is all about what I call the wonders of paper, and you'll be so amazed at what you see, the incredible upwelling of creativity. And I can't wait for the curators to show you that. Lastly, I'm glad that we're able to present this exhibition both virtually and in person. With the coronavirus pandemic, we want as many people to see this as possible and to share the work of these creative women. Paper is a wonder, and I know you're going to love this tour.
Our Women to Watch exhibitions are usually focused around a central theme, which is often a chosen medium. This year, that theme is paper. Our committees were tasked with working with their consulting curators in their regions to come up with short lists of artists working in paper. From that group, Orin and I selected the artists that are present today in the exhibition. Women to Watch is not a competition per se. It's really more about creating a cohesive exhibition around the theme. We are looking for variety in shape, color, scale, and I think you'll find a little bit of that in each of the galleries here in the exhibition. The first piece I'd like to talk about is the one hanging right next to me and is something of a showstopper when you come to the gallery in person. Right when you get off the elevators and make a left, this is what you see. This is a work of art by an artist named Gleitza. Angela was trained as a sculptor and for years worked with wood and metal, very heavy material. But when she discovered she could create the same sense of monumentality with paper as she did with those other materials, she was really captivated by that unexpected quality of it. The way that her sculptures exist in space and this tension between the interior and the exterior space is where the beauty lies with Angela's work.
Toronto-based artist Jen Aitkin creates site-specific sculptures and drawings based on her observations of her surrounding architecture. Rather than the pristine white cube gallery environment, she looks for floorboards, walls that jut out, columns, and air vents. These kinds of things that give architectural spaces a little bit of personality. In order to experience Jen's works, you have to look down at the floor, look up at the ceiling, and walk around walls. She encourages this kind of active viewer participation because she's exploring the relationship between the human body and our built environment.
These 3 dresses are the work of Arizona artist Annie Lopez. Believe it or not, they're made out of paper, tamale paper to be exact. Annie was drawn to this material while shopping in the grocery store one day and coming across tamale paper in the Hispanic food section. Amused, she decided she would try her cyanotype printing process on it, which results in this gorgeous dark blue color that you see. Annie's family is of Latin American descent, and her dresses stand in for herself. They tell stories about her and her family and their experience as Latin Americans in this country. Behind me on the wall here is the work of UK artist Mary Evans. Mary's work is very influenced by pictograms, that universal visual language that you see in airports and train stations. She trained as a painter and used to paint stencils onto canvases, but then decided that she liked the cutouts and started gluing them directly to the walls. And as you can see here, the effect is quite stunning. Mary is very interested in the historic treatment of the people of Africa and their diaspora. And the paper that she uses, called craft paper, which is found anywhere, it's very cheap, it's disposable, it's often used for packing objects. She finds in that a relation to the historic treatment of the Black body. Cheap, disposable, utilitarian, but she also sees in it a resiliency and a strength. In this piece, Prospect, she asks us to consider the Black body juxtaposed next to an image of the White House, and think about the use of enslaved labor to build the White House, as well as the enslaved people who lived and worked in the White House.
Jolie Liveday is an artist based in Arkansas. She's primarily a photographer who became interested in not just the subject matter, but the medium of the photographic paper itself. That's when she combined her love of photography with the art of origami. This installation is called All That I Love, and it is just that. These are photographs of her family, her friends, and objects in daily life that she finds beautiful. She folds each of those photographs into scarab beetles, which for her are a symbol of spiritual transformation. As she folds each beetle, she meditates on her life experiences. An installation like this can encompass thousands of varied beetles of different shapes, colors, and sizes. The artists in Paper Roots get incredibly creative with photography, especially personal photographs. On the wall next to me is a larger-than-life-size stencil by the artist Zadia Rahman, who is from Ohio. It is about 8 feet tall and 15 feet wide. She projects a photograph onto newsprint paper, traces the outlines, and uses an X-Acto knife to cut the paper into a stencil. It was originally intended to be a tool for a wall drawing, but she started to see the stencil itself as the end result. Zadia's work is a critical exploration of Muslim American identity. This is a photograph of her own family that she puts on display, a typical Pakistani American family. It counters the stereotypical imagery that we often see in Western media, particularly in a post-9/11 world. Another artist who uses photography inventively is Mira Rodriguez, who is from New Mexico. Mira uses the sight of the bed to think about larger ideas of the state of mind at rest and our subconscious. She uses images of bedding and photographs and collages them into various compositions. 2 of those images are here in Paper Roots. Behind me is the work Sun, Sun, which are images of her son's baby blanket that her mom had sewn. The image is bright and hopeful and also evokes the New Mexico sun. In contrast to Sun, Sun, we have Dark Water Drop, where she photographed her black duvet on her bed. She's specifically thinking about water as a precious resource for our bodies, and also of the water crisis in places like Flint, Michigan, that brings up images of dark, poisoned water. Depending on the context, the same collaged paper can invoke different responses from the viewer.
Paper is all around us. It's ubiquitous in our daily lives, especially in the form of books. Believe it or not, this object next to me is a book. This is by artist Georgia Russell, who is representing our French committee. Born in Scotland, Georgia has lived and worked in France for over 20 years. She first started making these book sculptures when she had residency in Paris and found some used books at a sale. She takes a scalpel and very carefully slices each of the pages, resulting in these beautiful abstract sculptures. 2 more of Georgia's works are in the exhibition. These are a little bit more two-dimensional than her book objects, but still contain a great amount of depth. She takes 2 sheets of watercolor paper and hangs them one in front of the other, creating these cuts again with a scalpel. She thinks of these works as evoking landscapes, of sea, sky, or land. It might be hard to tell from a distance, but I'm standing in a room that is literally covered from floor to ceiling in delicately cut wallpaper. This is the work of Elisabetta Dimaggio, an Italian artist living and working in Venice. Her work is entirely handmade, representing countless hours of work, labor, meditation. Elisabetta speaks of her work as an homage to the unseen labor that so many women have done in the past. She also likens it to writing in a diary, each cut recording a moment in time. The resulting effect is beautiful, yet delicate, almost ghostly, transient, like so many memories. This installation by Greater Kansas City area artist Haeyong Shin is comprised of over 60 individually cast pairs of feet. Feet are an overlooked part of the body, yet they're symbolic of the paths that we take, the routes that we take when we come together to fight for justice and equality. In fact, Haeyong was inspired by the women's marches of 2017 to make this piece. And she talks about it as an ongoing work. And each time she exhibits it, she adds more and more pairs of feet, representing individuals coming together as a collective for the greater good. The technique that Haeyong uses here is the traditional Korean paper casting technique called chiho kipap, a little bit like paper mache. Using very thin gampi paper, she casts the feet individually, and the thinness of the paper allows for the detail to come through of each bone and joint.
Oasis Duvernay is an artist from New York who creates politically charged work that looks at the overlap of gender, race, and class-based inequities. She creates graphite and cut paper waves out of individual panels that represent Black individuals that come together to form a collective movement, a wave for racial justice. The light interacting with the cuts in the graphite create a sense of flowing movement. The panels can also come apart and be used as protest sticks. Oasis' commentary on the Black condition in American society resonates in a really powerful and immediate way. Like Haeyong Shin and Oasis Duvernay, the Peruvian artist Natalia Rivas also reflects on social conditions. In the Burn series, of which we have 5 in the show, she's commenting on past political repression and violence in Peru. She takes photographs, such as her personal photographs of her mother, seen behind me, as well as images from press and newspapers of buildings and cars on fire, and very carefully with a candle burns out certain elements. So that thing that is now absent becomes even more present because our eyes are immediately drawn to that void. Natalia also explores the properties of paper in her embossed works. These 2 works are from her series called 20 Words, where she takes words from the Machiganga Spanish dictionary. These Machiganga words, spoken by one of Peru's indigenous communities, have no direct translation in Spanish. Through these embossed signs, Natalia gives these words new meaning through visual language.
Like an alchemist, Dolores Furtado of Argentina is interested in transformation and experimentation. She's very interested in the transformation that paper goes through the process of making it from raw material to watery pulp and then back again to solid. For her, the process of creation is very organic, and she likens it to the buildup of sedimentary rock. In fact, Dolores' works can be seen as what remains after the process of creation. San Francisco artist Julia Goodman is another artist who uses paper pulp in her practice. Sustainability is very important for Julia, and so she uses recycled fabrics and other materials to make her own paper pulp. Julia is very interested in the invisible labor of women, both physical and emotional. After the death of her father, she made Waning, this piece here, to express her grief over the loss of her father, and it represents the phases of the moon over the 11-month grieving period, which is traditional in Judaism. 13 years later, she made a corresponding piece called Waxing that likewise recorded the phases of the moon during her pregnancy with her son. As in her works Waning and Waxing, in her Rag Sorter series, Julia uses paper pulp pressed into wooden molds to make her creations. For this series, she was intrigued by the history of women in sorting rags to make paper. The names inscribed here are the names of Italian immigrant women who worked at a waste management plant in the mid-20th century in San Francisco.
In Paper Roots, we explore how contemporary artists reinvigorate traditional art practices like paper cutting, as seen in the work behind me by the Texas-based artist Natasha Bowen. Natasha explores the relationship between text and image. She transcribes by hand text from literary sources and painstakingly cuts each letter. This is dialogue from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass between the characters Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And these enlarged heads are the artist's interpretation of the two characters. The words are seen in concentric circles and are difficult to read. In doing this, Natasha shows that the written word is as open to interpretation as images.
DC-based artist Rachel Fabiarch mines her immense library of used and found books to painstakingly cut out images from those books. She'll spend countless hours searching for just the right image to fit in her fantastical tableaus. Often inspired by a particular event, but not attempting to recreate it narratively in any way, Rachel weaves together both collaged elements as well as hand-drawn elements. Sometimes it's very hard to distinguish between the two of them. This piece, Memorial Hill, is inspired by a real-life event that happened during World War I, the so-called Christmas truce, when enemy soldiers agreed to lay down their arms and celebrate Christmas together in the middle of a battlefield. Rachel is very drawn to these absurd conditions that humans often find themselves in, and her creations beautifully reflect this. Louise Passour is an artist who lives and works in Spain. She works on a fairly small scale because she's interested in drawing the viewer closer to come and inspect her work. She's particularly drawn to old archival paper. In this piece, Topology of the Fold, she's taken an old accounting book and deconstructed it, only to reassemble it in this wonderfully dense pattern. In Louise's two works on view here from her series, The Chance of Miscegenation, she uses Mexican lottery tickets to weave different color combinations together. The kind of weaving technique she's using is one that she observed while she was in Mexico. Through these works, Louisa is reflecting on the infinite possibilities of combinations, not only with the numbers, but the colors as well, and sees it really as a symbol for love of the other.
Elizabeth Alexander from Massachusetts carefully extracts the top layer of pattern from wallpaper and pastes it onto objects. All Things Bright and Beautiful has two sides. Elizabeth was working in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, a year after the devastating wildfires in 2016, where she saw charred debris everywhere. She started collecting domestic objects and branches, especially after a major storm near her house, and cast them to make hollow sculptures. On one side, you have this colorful domestic space, and on the other, you see something that is burnt and destroyed. For Elizabeth, this work is a symbol for the home, which is a space that literally houses your darkest and brightest moments in life. While Elizabeth Alexander's cut paper works are more sculptural, Georgia-based artist Lucha Rodriguez creates more subtle and whimsical works that she calls knife drawings. She makes superficial cuts with an X-Acto knife into the top layer of the paper that has a few brush strokes or geometric shapes of watercolor paint. Even though at first glance her works seem deceivingly simple, Lucha wants to surprise people with the complexity of her works upon closer inspection. I see these works as little symphonies of color, texture, and light.
Portuguese artist Delaila Gorchalves created this wonderful blue sculpture that you see behind me in a very interesting way. They're actually sheets of sandpaper that she's sewn together. To make this piece, Delaila worked together with family and friends and other people in her town to scrape by hand the sand off of the sandpaper. With the resulting sand that they collected, she formed a rock, thus returning the sandpaper to its two independent elements, the paper and the sand. Delaila is interested in reversing industrial processes.
In this work behind me, the Chilean artist Paola Podesta Marty recreates an ornamental cornice of the Vergara Palace, a cultural landmark and museum in Chile. She makes the work out of laser-cut butterflies, ants, and other insects as a way to show what would happen to cultural heritage if we did not preserve it. It would be overrun and overgrown with bugs and other elements of nature. Like other contemporary artists, Paola critiques urbanization efforts that replaces structures like the Vergara Palace with skyscrapers and other modern buildings. Paola is conveying the importance of holding on to these emblems of cultural heritage in the collective memory of Chile. Ichika Ohara, artist from Southern California, is inspired by the natural world. Ichika grew up in Japan, where she was influenced by paper as an aesthetic medium, particularly through origami traditions. So in her sculptures, she takes craft or recycled paper, and sometimes she dyes them in these very rich reds or blues. Sometimes she stains them with tea, and sometimes she leaves it untreated. And she stacks, twists, folds, glues, and sews the paper into these very textured sculptures that are abstract and evoke natural forms like plants, flowers, and sea life. What we love about this exhibition and what we hope you saw are the intergenerational and cross-cultural connections. These artists are from all over the world, and yet they all speak the language of paper. We'd like to extend our special thanks to all of our participating committees who so generously supported this exhibition. If you are able to do so safely, we hope you can come visit Paper Roots Women to Watch 2020.